I'm Randy Meiklejohn. Sarah, thank you for the shout out about I knew there was no way you could get up in front of even two people when I not mentioned the bicentennial, which is only 6 years away. That's my cue to start back at the centennial in 1924, which was the date of publication of Randolph Old and New by George N. Cross. And if you're a self-respecting Randolph cottager, you have at least one copy of this in your house. One of the sections that the Meiklejohns always liked reading was this one about the, where'd the page go? In the section about the cottages, and if you don't understand why at first, I'll explain as we go. Some years previous to 1896, Jerome Levitt's starch factory had been partly converted into a dwelling where Mr. L. M. Watson of the Ravine House domiciled his family during the summer season. The dilapidated building received the name of the Ranch. In the summer of 1896, Mr. Watson offered the ranch to an applicant for rooms in the already crowded hotel. During that summer, Mr. George N. Cross of Exeter, with his family and several friends, lived there, a summer life as happy as it was primitive. In the autumn, the tenant, impressed with the picturesque beauty of the spot, bought it and resolved to convert the ancient mill with its many quaint rooms, its log dam, and great overshot water wheel into a summer cottage. Any plan for living in a cottage apart from the hotels was an innovation received with some consternation. Where would cottagers obtain supplies? Would they not have to subsist largely on crackers and milk? Were inquiries with which the proposal was met. 3 summer vacations of hard manual toil by the new owner and his sons converted the old factory into a comfortable summer home. Green lawns and shrubbery and flower beds edged the banks of the rushing mill stream. The ranch became Burnbrae, for 27 years, a home of ever-increasing comfort and happiness to Randolph's first cottagers. And speeding ahead, after it was the Crosses, it became the Carlton Brook Inn. In the 1960s, after the highway was put in, my parents bought it, and that is our house now. But just a couple of paragraphs about it. Everybody likes to read about their house, right, or their family. But one thing we found as when we moved into the house was that the Crosses were still there. Our neighbor up the hill was Ernest Cross and his wife Jane. Ernest and his brother Hirsch were, I believe, grandsons of George N. Cross. And they still lived in the cottage behind us, which is now owned by Ted and Laura May. And my father learned at one point that there was a lot more that George N. Cross had written about Burnbrae. He had in fact kept a diary every day of the 3 summers when he was building the house, and Ernest had it in his possession. Now, if you knew my father, you know that he would, if there was something he really wanted from you, he would find a way. And after a friendly campaign of persuasion that lasted literally years, Ernest gave my father a facsimile of the diary. It's over 200 pages of longhand entries, and in the interest of time, I can just read you from one day. This is in the first year. Monday, June 14th. A cold, wet morning, showery and disagreeable. Mr. Weeks, our head carpenter and associate architect with myself, arrived before breakfast was over. After breakfast, I joined him in the basement, and there, among wheels and pulleys and old wagons, we planned how Burnbrae should be built and reckoned out the lumber to be used. At 10 o'clock, Mr. Watson came and drove me to Gorham to buy lumber. None could be had at the upper mill, and so it must be hauled from the lower mill 2 miles farther away. Introduced to Libby and Sons, I soon bargained for lumber, nails, etc. I hope enough of everything, but I greatly doubt it. After a few purchases in Gorham, we returned. Dined out, now this is 1897, so that's the middle of the day, right? Dined out at Elliott Cottage with Mrs. Nickerson, and hastily returned to the house to assist in the ceremonies of twitching out the dam stuff. The work was done by Mr. Watson, 2 men and a pair of horses. Chains were passed around the great logs, and the horses, well used to logging, snaked them out very lively and drew them away into Mr. Brown's pasture, where they were piled up for future burning like the wicked in the next world.